Hello, Tabor. So last week we began to consider some things that might be at the forefront of our mind during this really unusual life situation we're in. Some things that, if it keeps a grip on our minds, could really be beneficial for us going forward. And one of the examples that I brought up was just how concerned we are for vulnerable people, the lengths that we will go to for the sake of their well-being right now. And so let's consider what it might mean for someone to be vulnerable. I think one simple way to understand that would be the ease or the depth to which some of the normal life issues we face could really negatively impact somebody. But scripture doesn't use the word vulnerable, it uses a number of other words, some of which would be like fatherless or widows, people who don't have the kinds of relationships that provide support the way many of us do. Other words like destitute and poor come to mind. This would be relating to the idea of people who just lack physical and material resources. But that word poor, in the sense of poverty, is much broader than that. Poverty regards the brokenness in people's lives, particularly in terms of their relationship, whether that be with God or with others or even themselves. It's a very broad concept. Another word that would be broad is the word weak. And that word is used here in Psalm 41:1. Let me read that for you. It says, "Blessed is he who has regard for the weak. The Lord delivers him in times of trouble." That word weak is just one who's low. They're disregarded. They're disadvantaged in some way, whether that's through their own hands and their own choices or some other way. Either way, the point is we are to give consideration to them, to regard them, meaning we should have insight into their life. We should wisely understand their situation. So that means that we engage and we listen and we consider life from their point of view and see it through their eyes so that the Lord can then filter all of that to give us a clear picture, to give us His kind of wisdom and all of that. And so, really, the point of deeper understanding and consideration is that we would be moved to action. Proverbs 29:7 says, "The righteous care about justice for the poor." That word poor is the same word as weak in Psalm 41. But the wicked have no such concern. So, even if I don't see injustice in the life of the weak in my own experience, and even if I'm not the one perpetrating it, the fact is that I should be stirred up. I should care about it. And so, as we engage with those who might be weak in one way or another, comprehending their struggles and searching for gospel centered kind of help, the idea there is that we've properly engaged in caring about particular people. It's not just faceless and nameless problems in the world. It's about people that we can see and know, and they matter to us. And now their problems bother us, and we want to walk with them closer to Christ and presenting the wholeness that He provides. And so I have to ask myself, are there attitudes that keep me from caring deeply and having that concern that I need? And if I'm honest, there's probably a few things. One is that it's hard for me to be sympathetic when I see obvious sin issues in people's lives. I can begin to think, well, if they would just stop these obvious things and fill in the blank, whatever it is, then things would be so much easier for them. And in that sense, I kind of simplify their issues and just want to want to create this easy way for them to get out of their trouble. But really, that's not that helpful. It doesn't create great concern in my mind for them. Another thing that I can do is become really irritated by systems that don't work, whether it's government or other organizations that either aren't doing enough, or maybe I think they're doing too much and they're taking my taxpayer dollars and they're not being very efficient with it, trying to address the problems that are there. And so while I can question the motivation or the efficiency of whatever's going on out there, that cannot be a reason for me not to be properly engaged. That shouldn't disrupt me from being concerned about them the way God is. So, what about you, Tabor? Is there anything that's keeping you from engaging those who are most vulnerable in our culture on a regular basis? Is it time? Is it distance? Is it lack of understanding or not really knowing what to do? Is it irritation with systems that don't seem to work? Whatever it is for you, I'll tell you this much. The more this sits on my mind, the more I realize just how able Christ is to overcome any of those obstacles I've just mentioned if I'm ready to be moved by Him, to have His heart for the weak and the vulnerable people around me. So let's consider the words of Jesus then in Luke 4:18 and 19. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." So basically, there, God showed up to act in the lives of vulnerable people. And I think He wants us to do the same. So let's keep thinking about, Tabor, how that works in our own lives. Thanks for thinking about this, and we'll keep praying and talking, and we'll see you again next Thursday.